Well, good afternoon. Hello. It's great to be here on such a glorious day. And my name's Allison Hall, and I'm the founder of a charity called Seeds for Development, which we're based in Guildford, but we work in northern Uganda in villages. And I'm also the marketing manager for Alcis, which is a company on the Research Park just up the road. And we provide geographic information services to improve the lives of the world's most vulnerable people. And so there were just the four words that I wanted to really focus on are geospatial analysis and vulnerable people. And every community has vulnerable people, we do in Guildford, but when I'm talking here, it's about people who live in mud huts, people who've got no water, electricity, no money to send their children to school, people like in Ukraine having to flee war, drought, conflict, crisis. And hello. And the geospatial analysis is where we take satellite data and imagery, anything from space, that we can put on a map and add other layers, analyze it, and then back it up with verification from the ground. So, for example, in 2018, there was this huge drought in Afghanistan, and it was across the country, but our client, who was the Norwegian Refugee Council, they needed to know where the drought was having the biggest impact. And then they needed to understand the people who were being forced to leave their homes. Where were they going? What was happening to them? So they came to us, and we used satellite data to be able to understand the vegetation. So if it was green, it was lush. If it was red, basically it was dead. And so we could locate exactly where that drought was happening. Then we could use satellite imagery, and we could see where people were moving to. So you look at the change over time, and they were starting to build these camps, IDP camps for internally displaced people. And these were changing in size, and we could see this from satellite imagery. So by understanding where they were coming from, where they were going to, how many of them there were, and counting the tents by hand, you can imagine 1, 2, 3, 4. So we developed an algorithm so we could use machine learning. And this was 3 or 4 years ago. Now that's quite commonplace, but then it was quite innovative. So we could do this at scale. So the NRC could then understand where people had come from, where they'd gone to, how many there were, and bring the right aid to the right people at the right time. Then the drought was going to finish. So where were these people going to go? They couldn't go home to where they'd come from. So we took more layers of data so we could understand where were hospitals in towns, where there good roads, where there markets, where could they farm, so we could also help them guide those people back. And another example is last year there was a volcanic eruption on the island of St. Vincent. So the volcano went up, people went everywhere. So could we help the people who were fleeing the volcano get to shelter and safety? And so we could do that by using different satellite imagery and data, and then help people guide to shelters and on a dashboard. And they could see as well where these shelters had space and availability, all in 24 hours from our office in Guildford. And then Palestine and Israel, we know there's a constant problem with the conflict there. And there was one instance where there were bombs in Gaza, but there were lorries sitting at the border with emergency supplies, and they had to get to the hospitals, and they couldn't get to the hospitals. So we could take all of this data and provide routes, safe routes for them to get to the hospitals. And again, all from our office in Guildford. You don't need to go far. And we specialize in places where people really can't get to. In fact, you might have seen with this war in Ukraine, a lot on the BBC, you've seen the satellite images. And then they do all of that analysis. That's very similar to what we do in other parts of the world. But you don't need to be a very clever technical person to do it. My charity, Seeds for Development in northern Uganda, we work with these little villages. And there was an instance that we'd bought a 40-foot shipping container. And we put it in a village nursery school, and we were so proud of this container. And before COVID, I used to go 2 or 3 times a year. And then I went, and the container had gone. It had just been stolen. Now, how in a village in northern Uganda you steal a shipping container, I don't know, but it just disappeared. And we had no idea where it went. And then I joined Alcis. I was like, hang on a minute, Google Maps, I wonder. So I was looking, and below me, there was my shipping container in someone's front garden. And I've just come back from Uganda, and on Friday, I can tell you that we've got our shipping container back. And that is so geospatial analysis that we can all do. Thank you very much.